Welcome to Bobby Owsinski's Inner Circle. I'm Bobby Owsinski, and this is a show all about music, music production, and the music business. My guest today is Christy Crowl from ProMusicDB. But first, downloads are the lowest they've been in 10 years. Yes, the Billboard Digital Song Chart, the number one record by the Chainsmokers, Closer, is number one this week with only 84,000 sold. And that's the lowest in 10 years. Between 2006 and this last week, the lowest number one has been 90,000, and that was, again, way back in 2006. Just to show you how different things can go in a very short period of time, Closer sold about 208,000 downloads about a month ago, and it's done 1.7 million to date, so that's quite a lot. But the fact of the matter is, downloads are pretty much over. They're going really fast, and Nielsen says that downloads are down 25% this year alone. So as much as CDs are maligned as far as their sales are concerned, what we're seeing is at least that's somewhat steady the way it's dropping, where downloads are dropping like a rock, and it's never going to come back by the looks of things, where CDs, I think if nothing else, they're going to go the way they're going for a while. And if anything else, they may have a comeback at some point in time for some nostalgic reason about how they sound, just the way all formats seem to make a comeback, as we're seeing with vinyl right now. But you're not going to see that with downloads, I bet. If you have any questions or comments, send them to questions at BobbyOwnerCircle.com. Don't forget to check out my new Music Producer Formula course, as well as my other online video courses at BobbyOwsinskiCourses.com. For more on my music industry and music production blogs, go to BobbyOwsinski.com and find the links, where you can also read excerpts from my books. Now here's something that's worth looking forward to. Looks like in our near future here, we're going to have a much quieter world, and this is certainly going to be great for recording, especially if you're recording at home, especially if you're recording in your own studio. Maybe it's a garage, maybe it's a bedroom. Well, it's always possible that we could treat whatever room you're in and make it sound reasonably good. The problem is when it comes to isolation, it's a brute force process, and that means money. But there's actually a number of brand new quieting technologies that are coming on the market, and that's going to really make a difference. So, of course, we're all hip to electric cars and how quiet they are, but one of the things that most people don't realize is there's a lot of groundbreaking news in pavement surfaces, and there's something now called quiet pavement. It's a rubberized asphalt, and it can actually decrease the sound of tires on the road by as much as 12 dB, which is quite a lot. And anybody that has a studio in their house knows this is something that's really important, because you could be right in the middle of a great take, and all of a sudden the car riding down the street can really change things. So this is something, of course, that we want. If you live near an airport like I do, I live in the flight path of Burbank Airport, and jets are always a real pain. And sometimes you might hear them in the background. Usually what I have to do is stop for a couple minutes while they go over and out of the picture. But it looks like there's some new technology based on the wings of an owl that will actually change the way turbines are being made and make them a whole lot quieter. One of the things that happens is just the way the turbines work is the fact that there's a pocket of air at the end of the jet turbine. And that's, in fact, what makes all the noise. It's the turbulence in the air. And, of course, you don't have that with an owl as it's flying. It's very, very quiet. And after some research, they found out that just a few little tweaks on the turbine to make it more owl-like will make it a whole lot quieter. And we're going to start to see those engines very, very soon. Of course, one of the things that we want, especially if we have studios in a house, and let's say you have it in your bedroom or you're in an apartment or something like that, and you want some isolation. Well, of course, in Korea, one of the big problems is the density of people, and one apartment is on top of another, and there's so many people. It's a real priority for them to get some isolation. So there's actually a new type of tile that's out, and it's about the size of a tile, so it's very, very thin. And what it actually does, it tunes to the resonant frequencies of the room and of the other materials in the room to cancel out a wide range of frequencies that normally doesn't happen with acoustic material. Now, as you know, if you have Sonex, or even if you go to the old-fashioned 703 that all studios use, the Owens Corning 703, what you'll find is that stuff works, but it doesn't work across the wide spectrum, especially the low frequencies. And this material actually does. So that could be something very cool. And again, it's not very dense and it's not very thick. And that's usually the big thing, because you need a lot of thickness and a lot of denseness in material right now in order to get isolation. There's also some new windows coming out, also from Korea, that block sound waves. This, I think, is going to really influence studio construction design a lot, because when you go into most studios, and these are from the ground up studios, you'll find that there's no windows. And of course, the reason why is you can get some reasonable isolation with the technology that we have with windows, but it only works if you're in a very, very quiet place to begin with. And if you're, in fact, in the city, it gets tougher and tougher for that to work. Well, in fact, there's these new windows coming from Korea that block out sound waves. And again, they're not very thick at all. They have a way of separating the sound from the air, which is a good trick, and I'd like to find out exactly how they do that. But nonetheless, it promises to be a revolution in sound isolation with windows. And again, that's a problem that everybody has, especially if you're in a dense metropolitan area. Keep on looking at your local Home Depot and your local Lowe's, because it's entirely possible that we'll see these materials very, very soon. And again, a lot of times you can't find materials that we use for acoustics in these places, in these mass market places like Lowe's and Home Depot. But it would be really nice if we start to see these type of isolation products. Hopefully, we'll all have very, very quiet listening environments very soon. My guest today is Christy Crowl, who's an award-winning conductor, musical director, singer, and songwriter, and she also plays keyboards with Grammy-winning group Mannheim Steamroller. As impressive as that is, Christy is now devoting her time to something that can really benefit all musicians as the founder of ProMusicDB, an online database that attempts to make sure that every musician gets credit for the projects they work on. I spoke with Christy via Skype from her office in Los Angeles, where she explained how it all works. Can you explain to me the thought process behind coming up with ProMusicDB?
The thought process, or the actual case in point that kept happening over and over?
Yeah,
I guess there was a thought.
Yeah, what was that? Yeah, what prompted it?
Well, I'll tell you. I've lived in LA about 20 years now, and I've kind of gotten into the world of studio musician, but I also tour, and I've had some pretty high-level things, but then I also do, some kind of background things that no one really knows about. And I'm not like my own, I didn't discover that way of making a living in the music business. There are many other people doing the same thing. And what started happening was on sessions, people were saying, it'd be nice if we got credit for this. So you hear that from your colleagues. It's like, yeah, that'd be nice. And then I was touring with a pretty popular theatrical show, and we had musicians in the pit that we would hire in every city. I was the first woman conductor of Wicked, so I toured with them for a while, and we would hire local orchestras to play with us, and we had the core musicians that toured with the group and or toured with the show. And you meet these incredible musicians that have these amazing resumes. I played with Bobby, but I did this, I did that, and then now they're teaching at the university, and their students really don't have anything on the internet that says, oh, my teacher did this, so you start thinking, well, maybe there's something to this. And then myself, you see, some credits pop up on IMDb because I did some film and TV work, even as a composer. But then I had my own, album, one, but, other people do 4 or 5 of their own. And that might get picked up on AllMusic or Music Brains or Discogs. And then I'm keeping up my website all the time. It's like, well, what happens if this goes away? No one really cares. And so this just kind of this thought process of, wow, as we get more and more in the digital age, the information about who we are, here Google, you can Google anyone and find out where they live and what their house looks like. But finding out who wrote something or who played on something that you listen to, you can't find out without a lot of digging. And that just seemed really silly to me. So I had a background in creating databases. I had a site called Pro Singers Access that was geared towards session singers, for the kind of production community to find a certain type of singer. And it was kind of a resume type database. We actually had a little algorithm that said, if, what kind of vocalist do you need, rock and roll, or what do they need to hit? And then the singers could upload their demos and describe it, and then it would do a percentage match. If a production company said, I need a rock female that can hit an E, they could find that person to a percentage degree. So anyway, so all that being said, I needed to vet the idea and say, hey, certainly someone else has this idea. Certainly, there must be just something that I'm not aware of and that I can make my community aware of to say, okay, all your credits should be here. And you start asking, and there isn't. So I had some folks in the tech community that I went to college with, actually, that I went to and said, hey, why doesn't this exist? Or does this exist and I don't know about it? And they said, well, it's a big problem. And then you not only get into credits, but attribution and metadata, which, is rights management and payment systems. And you're like, wow, it's really just this core idea of affiliating who wrote what to a recording or who played on what to a recording, just from the information. That core principle hasn't been figured out. And it's time, but the effect that it has, say, the music profession. So let's fast forward. Okay, well, I'm a little bit of probably an idealist and probably think a lot more about archival than a lot of people, but thinking about preserving history and the music profession. I've been a musician since I was a little girl. I toured with my dad's group for a long time, and performing since I was a very little girl. Very little girl. And you think of that body of history. Not that mine's all that fantastic, but mine times 100,000, like the workforce. That's a huge body of work, and that represents people going to the theater and seeing a concert. That represents, someone listening to something on the radio. That body of work is representative of a lot of our personal history. So just even, the culture that we live in. So anyway, I kind of dug in, and I'm kind of a tech nerd a little bit. So I'm like, okay, what can we do to fix it? It can't be that hard. Well, so the out part, psychologically trying to accommodate the technological advances that have happened in the industry and communicate that to, the musician, and saying, okay, there's all this stuff out there, but it still can't figure out that you played on that or that you wrote that. It's mind-boggling. And then you try to navigate, ways to do that. And the way I found to really get the musicians invested is to talk about their archive and their legacy and preserving the music profession. And that really came to light more when I talked to the library community, because, of course, I talked to the tech people, and they're like, well, we need this. I'm like, well, does anyone talk to the music libraries? Like, I went to college and spent a lot of time in the music library. And so, well, surely there must be something there. Like, there's some internet fairy of the library that we don't know about that has, this storage house. And that community actually said no. And these are major music schools in our country that have no resource to give their music students about who played what, like contemporary musicians. In an age where you're just used to Googling everything on your phone, you should be able to find out who played what. So they don't have a resource either. Their resources in all music, or they tell their students, well, I'll find out what I can, but it's not, even if they do find out who played on something that a musician asked them, the librarians, then they don't have any place to put it for other people to know. They don't have a natural, this kind of cohesive database. But the biggest thing that came up for me in talking to all these people is no one asked the musicians.
Yeah.
No one asked for their participation in these mega databases. So, IMDb kind of does, but, AllMusic doesn't, Discogs really doesn't, Wikipedia does it. And then you start talking more and more and seeing that there's wrong information, about people, and they can't correct it.
Yeah.
So, that is a whopper of an answer to, your very simple question.
It's funny.
It's a long.
It's funny you
You know?
should mention that, though, because when I interview people, sometimes I look at their Wikipedia page or IMDb or whatever, and I'll get some credits and I'll mention something. Oh, so you worked on that. And I'll go, oh, that was so long ago, and it's at the top of the list. I don't know why. Or they'd say, no, I never did that, or I don't know how it got there, or it was hardly ever correct all the way through. And this is any source that you pick up. So yes, I understand, the need for it.
And you think over time, all those mistakes, how they add up, but that will define music history in 30 years. If those things aren't corrected, if you think of, 5,000 musicians on Wikipedia, and if all of those entries are wrong, and they're wrong on all music or incomplete, and there's no centralized place coming from the artists themselves, this, data that comes from the artists themselves, so at least, give their best shot at saying this is what I mean. Then in 30 years, what's going to be accurate? How can anyone look at that record in 30 years based on these commercial databases now and say this is correct? So anyway, that's kind of where I was thinking.
In many ways, it was actually better before in the realm of the LP, when the vinyl album, where you had a fair amount of information available. Now, you had to have access to that in order to see, but generally speaking, there was a lot more information than once we pass into the digital age, that's kind of forgotten.
And what we have to remember is that data is data. So the credits on the back of those records now effectuate payments for people. So it's not just affiliation and attribution, but now you have re-releases of things. You have repackaging and new types of media of those, recordings. And so you can't locate people. I mean, I've been at like music organization union meetings where they play a commercial recording and say, anyone in here know who was singing that? Because they're reusing it for this, they're going vintage and they're using this, and we need to know because we have money to give them.
Yeah.
and so identifying people in the music profession is really, I think, going to become a hot topic moving forward as the music industry kind of embraces these new technologies.
It is already. I was on a panel yesterday at Digital Hollywood, and it was about what the music business will look like in 2020. It didn't take long before someone began to talk about this topic. And it was, I think it was someone from the Recording Academy actually saying, I'd really like to call up Alexa, the Amazon thing. I'd like to say, Alexa, who played on that? Or else, just dig down anytime you hear something and have one of the digital assistants dig down for you. Not possible. Not possible. So, okay. Has ProMusicDB actually launched?
Oh, yes. Actually, I brought I have the site up and I can demo it for you if you want to see it. I know we're recording, but we can do that another time. But yes, we launched a couple weeks ago. I've equated what we're doing as not just another platform. We want to position ourselves as an organization representative of musicians in the digital economy. Much like there's an organization called IDER, the Entertainment Identifier Registry, that is a membership organization, nonprofit for actually the film and TV studios. And they help the film and TV studios identify their project and their products in the digital world. So now musicians themselves are becoming these own little mini studios or mini businesses. They have so many entities they need to interact with these days, from their membership organizations to the PROs to, say, NARIS, to if they have a TuneCore or a CD Baby, and now coming down the pike are now some maybe blockchain companies or digital service providers. There's not just one digital service provider they need to deal with. So getting their core data lined up is, I think, really key right now. And the only thing that really resonates to a musician, a lot of that I've talked to, is kind of preserving legacy and keeping it all in one place. So anyway, we have launched, and our platform is functional and it's an archive. And what's really neat about it is that we've integrated with Wikipedia and MusicBrainz. So what we allow is, if you have an abstract on Wikipedia, you can pull in that abstract if it's based on your name. See if you have the same name as someone else, it might come up wrong.
Yeah.
But then you can correct it. So you can pull in the Wikipedia abstract, and then you can correct the information if it's wrong. And same thing with Music Brains. We pull in you do a title search, and then you can affiliate your role and then your instrument. So if you were a producer, you affiliate that as a role. If you were a keyboard player, you say, I was a studio musician and I played keyboards, and that kind of affiliates it together. And then we have a 5 gig, we're starting out with a kind of a 5 gig personal private archive. So if you took pictures, if you have a contract, if you have a Logic file or a Finale file that you just want to keep affiliated with that credit, it's a way of organizing. So you have a private archive, and you just say add archive, and it always affiliates to that credit. So I believe moving forward in the music economy, the way musicians are going to monetize is on their archives, their data and their archives, like their pictures of things, their little remnants of lyrics that they wrote, or, pictures from the road, with fans, that kind of thing. But they don't want them all over the place on the internet. And it's really getting, I've got, my Dropbox is so fractured. It's like personal stuff here, professional stuff here, semi-professional here. And the way, if you think about archiving and keeping track of things, I remember Mannheim Steamroller, for instance. So there's professional pictures that people come and take of us. Well, but then my family comes to the show and I take pictures with them. It's all the same event, but I may not want all that on my website. I may want some of that on my website, but I'm getting tired of having to shift it all around all the time. So we have a private archive, and if you want to keep something in your gallery, like the professional pictures in your gallery, that's great. That's public. And then if you want to have the personal pictures, like my family came and saw me, in DC when I played, then that picture is organized and it's there, and it'll always be affiliated with that credit. So, in the future, I see us, maybe providing a service that can maybe make physical books, picture books, scrapbooks for artists, or in addition to kind of this data management system. So when they need to do business, we can push out their credit information onto a form. Like if they need to register a title with BMI, if they need to register a Sound Exchange, that they were on a title instead of, the Sound Exchange. They're doing a great work, but it's pretty extensive what someone who doesn't want to deal with stuff has to fill out to get, to claim the stuff on Sound Exchange. So we're trying to make it a little easier and economize the actions online that a musician has to take in kind of multiple places.
What kind of data then is required, preferred?
Well, to start out with, it's just credits, but it's performance credits across the board. You have your sound recordings credits, your musical works credits, you have your live credits, you have, if it's album, EP, if you wrote a video game or sang on a video game or commercial, it's really, or corporate. So our structure, I can screen share with you and we can log in if you like, if that's easier, but we have, any kind of credit, it's categorized. You see if there's a title that exists in Music Brains, or you see if you have a bio in Wikipedia, and then you pull that in. If it doesn't exist, you create it, and then you can create your archive from it. That's the core of what we are. What we have coming down the pike is we have really done extensive study in the standards that exist in the industry regarding how to push data to different entities that have to do with paying a musician, or a musician documenting that they worked on something. So coming down the pike in the next year are kind of, if you need to register a title at BMI, if you need to register your affiliation with Sound Exchange, or register an AFM contract. So those forms will kind of be pre-populated with your credit metadata. And then you'll have to add, some different information to each one. But then you can save that form in your archive and affiliate it. Now, we're not integrated with all these entities yet. That's kind of internet fairy thinking, and I hope that they will accept us as we populate kind of later on. But the fact is, I don't know, for me, the number of forms I fill out online to prove I paid something, and then when I even sing on a movie, you get to the session and you fill out 30. You have to sign about 30 pieces of paper,
Yeah.
and then to keep track of all that for every project I do. It's pretty overwhelming. So I just thought, well, maybe a convenient way of doing it is just giving an archive so you can at least know to refer back to it. So one day when we have the integration, at least that form is there. And it's stored. If I have to refer back to it, I have it,
That's very cool. Definitely. I understand the Recording Academy just came out with some new recommendations for metadata standards, right?
Yeah, the RIN standard. Yes, and we've had pretty long conversations with Maureen Droney at the Recording Academy, and she's aware of our project, and the RIN standard, and this is what I hope we're trying to provide and work ourselves into, is the standards that exist do not provide a repository. They are suggestions for how to collect data or with credit. So with the new RIN standard is basically a recommendation for how to collect data for the producers. You need to get this data collected when you submit these masters, and what they're also, I think, trying to speak to the digital audio workstation folks like Avid and things about making that standard in a form that you would fill out and attach to a Pro Tools file, that type of thing. The problem is, where does the data go after? Like, it's not stored anywhere. You can't refer back to it. It'd be encapsulated there. And I don't know that Avid really wants to be a database. I think that's the conversation I've heard. So the standard is the recommendation for, oh yeah, you need to make this available with the software. When the recording software, it needs to be, there so that producers can fill it out. Well, in my experience in the industry, you might record remote sessions in Nashville and you don't know the guy who played, it's just, yeah. And you don't have the same version of Pro Tools as someone else, and so you're saving it as a lower version. I mean, I don't know how all that has been talked about, but at least they got this recommendation. But implementation and then the repository for where does it go to refer back to it, I don't know. And that's, I think, where we can come in and say, if that can get pushed to us, if a producer can create a project in our database because we're compliant with DDEX, we can align with that pretty easily and at least be the repository for that data, at ground level. So it'd be very functional if they want to embrace it in that way.
Okay, so this is something that the creators, musicians, creators, whomever, would actually be filling out rather than the distributors or the middle people, the record labels, which up until now, the record labels are in charge of all the metadata, and it's usually the lowest person on the totem pole that's filling it out, which is a big problem there. So I understand that would actually be pretty good. It's another job for a musician, which, would they do it or not?
There is no internet fairy, I'm here to tell you. So if thinking our organizations or the labels or the PROs are going to fix it, it's just not going to happen. They each have their own function, and interoperability is not one of them.
Yeah.
So
does it cost anything?
We have yes, it costs $97 a year. If again, we're a membership organization, but it's tax deductible and it's a write-off. Yeah. So I'm keeping it in the nonprofit. That we don't want to own the data. The other issue with the new economy in digital is this issue of you don't own your identity online. If you're on AllMusic, they own it. They own that data about you. IMDb, same thing. So if either of those companies change course and you're banking that they're going to have all your information, well, in 10 years, the picture may look a lot different. Plus, you can't reuse that data. So we're kind of providing this really necessary, again, I keep going back to IDER, this place of identity. We have digital identifiers for music professionals, which no one has anywhere, that are created. It's a 22-digit identifier instead of an ISNI number for a music professional based on data from their memberships and from which is their affiliations, from their birth date and from where they grew up. So that's another thing we're providing.
Yeah. Are we talking about just the U.S. or does this go beyond there?
It could. I am hopeful that we could be international over time. But again, being a membership organization and really wanting to provide a service to our members, not just be this, free-for-all database that sells advertising. I don't want to become that. This is a membership organization for musicians that becomes like another. I don't know territorially how we, within the nonprofit realm, can we have international members? Sure. What kind of services we can provide past the platform in the future, will have to be determined, because this is kind of a new entity to take on. I don't know what restrictions other countries might have on access to data if we were to, so I'm learning this process too. But it's really not a platform that's just a database, like just another database. It's an organization for musicians to store their archive, which is their metadata, and we want to make it repurposed, for their personal and their commercial use.
Very cool. One of the things, everybody has the same problem when it comes down to international. It'd be great to have a worldwide database of how to get paid. And obviously that's not happening, and it doesn't look like it's on the future. So, or in the near futures. So it's somewhat. It seems like it'd be easier for metadata, though.
It should be, and we can have, say, committees, or my CTO is now in India, so ProMusicDB India, and my CMO is in Portugal. So we kind of have an international team ready to go, to head different chapters. But, I still believe in the one-on-one, and creating an organization. You need to have meetings, and you need to, have like people on the ground in different areas. So if it is international, then we need to know what's going on in London or in Paris or whatever, as far as the ground level musicians, and what digital services, they're dealing with there that might be different than in the United States. So, we're at the beginning of this, and in 10 years, I would hope it would be international. But for right now, in the realm that we can provide good service to a certain group of people, I'm probably more than likely going to be taking on more, maybe, U.S. Founding members right now.
Sure. Understood. What have been the major challenges for you so far?
Interestingly enough, the resistance of the musicians to understand the complexity of what's going on in their industry. The industry has actually embraced this quite a bit, the academic part and the industry part, saying, yes, we need this. It's been the musicians themselves that have kind of been in this education and communication gap of how the industry now functions, between how they get paid and how they get credited. And there's this opinion that someone else should be taking care of all this, or my union should be doing this, or my PRO should be doing this, or the
record label. Yeah, right, sure.
And I guess that's everyone complains about it. But not everyone is that way. Everyone else says, we love the work you're doing, but then we want it to be for free.
Yeah.
So and I'm thinking, well, I pay $200 a year to be part of NARIS, and I don't really go to any of their meetings, and it's really for nothing. So we're like $97. So we're giving you a platform and kind of a voice. Literally, I have been the only voice for artists in these technology meetings, that, metadata working groups in the industry, because our organizations don't go to those meetings. They're not part of them, the inner workings. And I think that needs to change in the digital economy, especially with data. Why should one facet of the industry figure out a data problem? It's still going to be a problem if creator level and archival level are still missing out, on that.
I'm not surprised when you say there's some resistance from artists, because when it comes down to it, they don't understand the realities of the new digital music business. The scale of the business is so much different. So when you think of a million, the way it used to be, a million is a lot. And you think of, in the digital realm, a million is just kind of a blip on the radar. So, again, until they kind of get over that, it's hard for them to get their arms around something else, around the metadata.
Have in their head that, oh, well, you know what, it should be for free and it should be an advertising model.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people have said that to me. It's like that model is not efficient. IMDb, AllMusic, they don't have anything to do with the monetary function of your life. They have nothing to do really with the archival function that you should want for yourself. They're a commercial database. They sell data. It's not, you don't own it. It's not you. It doesn't represent you. So that's been a little bit of a battle in some circles. It's like, well, why isn't this free and you just sell advertising? It's like, well, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Do you want to advertise too? This is anyway. So explaining the complexity of the problem, and then the simplified solution is we have a database to store your archive. So that's the simplified solution. But it goes so many levels down, and that's I think where the rub is. Like, it's just like you said, understanding how the new business works. It's this concept of, well, isn't someone else taking care of that? Someone else is dealing with that. I shouldn't have to.
Well, and if they are, they're probably not doing it correctly. That's the big problem there too. Did you bootstrap this, or do you have investment?
Oh, I paid for it all.
Wow.
Yeah, I've invested in everything. Because I believe in it. It's come from just hard-earned, musician money. And so, like I said, it's a membership organization. It's nonprofit. So there's no, we were one of the only projects selected to talk to venture capitalists. I assembled my team. I went through a course at Stanford called the Stanford Technology Entrepreneurship Program. So that's where kind of my technology team came from. And even then, I said, this is nonprofit. You're not going to we might make a salary, eventually, but it's not, like big tech money. But they just believed in it. So anyway, at the end of that year of courses, we were selected to talk to venture capital. And so that kind of says how worthy I think the project is. I don't think we could do it with venture capital. I think there'd always be an issue with so how else do you do it? That's the other kind of realization for musicians. If I were to go the advertising way, or were to take venture capital into this type of effort, you're not going to own your data. Like, the fact of you owning your archive, that could go away tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I want to do that. Information is information. Your credits are your credits. It's your history, it's your legacy. I want you to be able to monetize it in the future. So yeah, there hasn't been any. We did apply for 3 grants from the National Endowment for Humanities and didn't get them. We applied with the Music Library Association in partnership and didn't get them. We also applied to the Grammy Foundation twice, didn't get those. So everyone says it's a great idea, but I think it's such a concept that it's like, oh, we don't want to get on the hook for funding this thing every year, So again, it's this kind of education for musicians. Like, your data is now an asset.
Yeah.
You want to be able to put it in one place, like manage it from one central location. Then why not create this great public archive of work, and then, reuse the data as you need to, but it's yours, and it's in this, you support other artists and their legacy, and, kids can look you up on the internet, and eventually we would love to feed into a Spotify or, Napster, so you could do exactly what that, guy on your panel said. Why can't I ask Alexa who played on that?
Okay, so I can see how this would work for current musicians, but what would you do for historic projects that were worked on?
That's a great question. And when we hopefully start to attract labels and organizations to work with, I think that will be the type of things that we work on. We can basically input their data from archives into our system. We actually did an experiment with the Wrecking Crew for this when we were testing out the database. So we took all of their, basically all the contracts on file at AFM for the Wrecking Crew. And we essentially populated everybody's profile based on that to see how that would work. So if we have validated data like that, say maybe the Musicians Union one day might say, here's all of our digital archives, which mean these are the PDFs, the digital PDFs, but organized, you're not in fields, and put these into profiles in your system for these projects and these people. So it would be more, I think, based on a project basis, like from the labels and from small organizations or the service providers that are trying to find royalties for people, those type that are validated past projects that we can take in and we would populate. And then musicians, if they remember something else about that session or they have an archive about it or have a picture, they can affiliate their archive with that particular project.
Very cool, Christy. Very cool. Last question. What's the one piece of maybe business advice or music business advice that you received from somebody or you kind of learned along the way?
Business advice.
Yeah, the best piece.
Gosh. Don't listen to anybody. If you know you're right, don't listen to anybody else. And I think they were right, because there are plenty of reasons not to do something, So, but if you, I think the biggest, it's like if you know you're right and you've sussed it out, then don't listen to anybody else. Don't wait and don't listen.
To find out more about Christy, go to ChristyCrowl.com. That's ChristyCrowl, all one word, ChristyCrowl.com. And to find out more about ProMusicDB, go to ProMusicDB.com. That's ProMusicDB, as in database, all one word, .com. Thanks for listening and being in my inner circle. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, please send them to questions@BobbyOInnerCircle.com. To listen to other episodes of Bobby Owsinski's Inner Circle, go to BobbyOwsinski.com and select the podcast tab, or go to BobbyOInnerCircle.com, or find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Mixcloud, and Google Play. At BobbyOwsinski.com and BobbyOInnerCircle.com, you'll find a sign-up form for my newsletter and for alerts for new podcasts. This is Bobby Owsinski. I will see you next time.